Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you are today. Hope everybody's doing well. Just to introduce myself, my name is Chris Pennell, and I'm an analyst at Futuresource. Futuresource is a research agency, and we look at the adoption of technology, specifically around sort of audio-visual technologies by enterprises. And I'm going to be talking this morning about how higher education institutions are using remote learning to keep students engaged and productive. During the last 30 years, disruption to the higher education sector has historically been driven by government's desire to expand access to higher education. But going forward, disruption to the sector is now coming from a lot of, potentially more areas. We've got the growing cost of tuition, we've got declining public sector funding, we've got the rise of non-traditional students, and the growth in alternative channels to access learning, such as massively open online courses, which are all enabled by digital technologies. And you might remember back in 2012, those of you with a good memory, that was the year that was dubbed as the year of the MOOCs, when MOOCs such as the Khan Academy, Coursera, Udacity, and edX were expected to disrupt face-to-face education, just as digital technologies were disrupting other sectors. And while MOOCs might not have disrupted higher education to the extent expected, many traditional higher education institutions have incorporated these tools into their existing courses with some great results. And in some areas, we've seen sort of really high take-up of courses. And this trend is not confined to just one or two sort of countries. Student access options are expanding as higher education institutions embrace digital technologies in many countries. Classes which prior to the digital era were restricted to lectures, talks, and physical interactions are no longer being designed this way. Teachers and students in many countries now have a digital toolbox to help them. The key element of this toolbox are video conferencing technologies. The video conferencing market is in a period of transition and has evolved dramatically over the past 5 to 7 years. Video communications have now largely been digitized, leading to a much wider, more affordable opportunity for HE institutions. Increasingly, these institutions are using video conferencing tools to make online courses more accessible. We see them enabling students to collaborate better on projects. We see them using them to connect lecturers and students with remote subject matter experts, and holding student-teacher drop-in sessions online even. And these applications bring significant cost savings and can increase the quality and accessibility of course on offer from universities. At the same time, the rapid adoption of cloud provides flexibility in content storage and makes the sharing of data easier. Enterprise collaboration providers like Cisco, Microsoft, Google, they're focusing on integrating video conferencing into some of the hardware, the interactive displays, into some of their sort of education software packages, enabling sort of integration with applications such as Microsoft Teams and Cisco's WebEx. Another key tool we see institutions using is around lecture capture technologies. The process of recording classroom lectures as videos and making them available for students to review after class is gaining popularity. Today, such technologies can combine audio, screen capture of the slides, video recordings of the speaker, or what's being written on the board. They can provide access to captions, transcripts, audio and text descriptions, and collaborative annotations. Changes to the way students access content is also a major driver. The ubiquity of, apologies for the background noise, the ubiquity of mobile devices and the trend towards on-demand content that can be accessed across different media are driving factors. Each of these factors has created expectations from students to be able to review and participate in lectures remotely. As I've already said, the rise of MOOCs has also provided a growing market for universities to tap into, enabling distance learning at scale and providing an additional incentive for universities to invest, as we have seen. Since the beginning of this year, online course materials have taken on a new importance. It's difficult to ignore the impact of COVID-19. Given the lack of time available to adjust, many instructors are understandably struggling to develop an approach. While faculty members want to retain face-to-face interactions, they do see the benefit in adopting a blended approach depending on risk. Given time, formats will mature, and we're sure we will see instructors combine recorded lectures with online discussions, preserving that one-to-one interaction that occur in the lecture hall. We're already seeing this trend. A recent piece of research by Educause, and they clearly shows how lecturers do interactions and how they're evolving those interactions, and the blending, if you like, of the face-to-face and online, depending on, obviously it depends on the type of activity, but we do see the pace accelerating. Increasingly, also, those entering higher education will expect to interact with faculty members and other students via online channels. The use of conferencing technologies in K-12 is already well established. Schools, though, operate with much reduced budgets compared to HE institutions, and this has often meant that many schools have adopted free or low-cost solutions that generally require little in the way of internal support. So while these have been good to give students a taste of digital technologies, how to use these technologies, and to expand sort of access to learning materials and interactions, sometimes the results are not always satisfactory. Poor sound and quality is often a common complaint when we survey schools and we ask them about their experience with using these sort of applications and tools. However, these generally are only the symptoms. The real problem tends to lie with connectivity, and we're seeing governments take strides to address this challenge. It is important that HE learn from some of the experience that we see in the K-12 sector and invest in those building blocks. Now, while the outbreak of COVID-19 has had an unprecedented impact on higher education, we have seen technologies already driving significant changes to the way students and teachers interact. And by harnessing these trends, we do believe that HE institutions can reach beyond campus walls to empower an increasingly diverse set of learners at a global scale. COVID-19 is not so much going to bring in new changes, it is just accelerating those changes that were already occurring. We've got a couple of examples now where we're already seeing this happen. One of these is in China, that of the Zhejiang University. The university there spans 7 sites in East China's Zhejiang province and has moved its teaching online in response to the COVID-19 shutdown. Now, by using a combination of teacher training and online delivery and accelerating its adoption of digital learning platforms, the university was able to offer students access to 5,000 courses online just over 2 weeks after the lockdown. And this was to both undergraduate and graduate students. Also, the course hub, Learning at Zoo, has attracted over 500,000 visits. And the Dingzong Zoo, which is a live streaming app, which is co-developed by Alibaba, has recorded a total audience of over 300,000 since it was launched. So it does show that students are willing to use this. The United Arab Emirates, the Ministry of Education, has also laid out 3 scenarios in which it sees e-learning being extended. Obviously, the first is where the pandemic does not improve, and it will continue to do 100% of learning online from home. However, it does expect the pandemic to ease, and it does expect to continue to use online digital tools and remote learning going forward. Even if we see children return to school normally, the Ministry of Education still expects that 30% of education in the future will be done online, 70% will be done face-to-face, so that they can maintain some of the benefits that they've seen from using digital tools in the classroom and remote learning. Even closer to home, we're seeing institutions having to think carefully about how they can utilise remote learning, not just in the period of COVID-19, but post-COVID-19 as well. Closer to home, institutions such as Cambridge colleges are also having to face up to the prospect. But for the short term and the long term, remote learning is perhaps the way forward. Now, we understand that there are significant challenges to finding the right blend. There's no cookie-cutter approach to this. Each institution must find its own path. Some areas will be more important than others for different institutions, depending on the student cohort, the lectures, the objectives of the university, what it's teaching. So institutions must focus on the fundamentals that support the ongoing viability of the institution. Staying relevant, as learners' demands of education changes, will require institutions to develop a clear vision for what the future student cohorts will look like and how those different groups will want to interact with the institution. But also importantly, what support they will need in terms of student well-being and in using technology and staying safe. That's the end of my talk. So thank you.